You're not lazy, even if that's what you've been telling yourself lately. Even if it feels like you should be doing more, focusing more, pushing harder, and you're not. Because what you're experiencing right now is not a lack of discipline, it's something deeper. Something that most people misunderstand. And it usually starts the same way. You sit down to do something important, something matters, something you've been planning to do, and for a moment, you feel ready. You feel like this time, you're going to focus, you're going to stay consistent, you're going to finally get things done. But then something happens. Your mind starts to drift, not in a big, obvious way, but in small distractions. A thought here, a notification there, a sudden urge to check something that doesn't really matter. And before you realize it, your attention is gone. You try to bring it back. You tell yourself to focus, to stay disciplined, but it doesn't feel natural. It feels forced, heavy, like you're fighting your own mind. And after a while, you give up. Not completely, but enough to feel like you failed again. And that's when the label appears. I'm lazy. I have no discipline. I can't focus. And the more you repeat that, the more it feels true. But here's the part no one explains to you. Your mind is not designed to focus in a state of overload. It's not designed to perform at its best when it's constantly stimulated, constantly distracted, constantly processing too much information at once. And right now, that might be exactly what's happening to you. You're not lazy, you're overwhelmed, overstimulated, mentally exhausted in a way that doesn't always feel obvious. Because it's not physical tiredness, it's cognitive overload. Too many inputs, too many thoughts, too many things competing for your attention. And when your mind is in that state, focus becomes difficult. Not because you can't do it, but because your system is not in the right condition to support it. And instead of recognizing that, you blame yourself. You think the problem is you, when in reality, the problem is the environment your mind is operating in. And that changes everything. Because the moment you understand that, you stop fighting yourself and you start understanding yourself. And once you start to understand that, once you begin to see that what you're experiencing is not laziness, something shifts in the way you look at your behavior. Because instead of judging yourself immediately, instead of labeling every moment of distraction as failure, you start to observe it. You start to notice patterns. You begin to see how your attention moves, how easily it gets pulled away, how quickly your mind jumps from one thing to another. And at first, that realization can feel uncomfortable because it shows you how much noise there actually is in your mind. Not just random thoughts, but constant stimulation. Things you've seen, things you've heard, things you've been exposed to throughout the day. And all of that stays with you. It doesn't disappear the moment you stop looking at it. It lingers. It competes for your attention even when you're trying to focus on something else. And that's where the real problem begins. Not in your ability to focus, but in the environment your mind has been placed in. An environment filled with interruptions, notifications, quick dopamine hits, endless scrolling, and your brain adapts to that. It becomes used to switching constantly, used to short bursts of attention instead of sustained focus. And when you suddenly expect it to sit still, to concentrate deeply, to stay on one task for a long period of time, it resists. Not because it can't do it, but because it's not trained for it anymore. And that resistance feels like laziness. It feels like lack of discipline, but it's not. It's a mismatch between what your brain is used to and what you're asking it to do. And understanding that is powerful because now, instead of forcing focus, you begin to rebuild it, step by step, in a way that aligns with how your mind actually works. And as you begin that process, as you start to rebuild your focus instead of forcing it, something deeper starts to happen. You begin to reconnect with your attention in a way that feels different, more intentional, more controlled, because now you're not just trying to focus harder, you're creating the conditions that make focus possible. You start to remove some of the noise. You reduce the constant input. You give your mind space to breathe again. And at first it feels strange, almost uncomfortable, because you've been so used to constant stimulation that silence feels unfamiliar. Your mind looks for something to grab onto, something to distract itself with. But if you stay with it, if you don't immediately fill that space, something shifts. Your thoughts slow down. The urge to switch disappears little by little. And in that space, your attention begins to stabilize. Not perfectly, not instantly, but enough for you to notice the difference. And that's where real focus starts. Not from forcing your mind, but from calming it. Because focus is not something you push, it's something that emerges when your mind is clear enough. And right now, that's what you are building. A state where your attention is not constantly pulled in different directions. A state where you can actually stay with one thought, one task, one moment, without feeling the need to escape it. And that state is powerful. Because once you experience it, even for a short time, you realize something important. You were never incapable of focusing. You were just operating in a system that made it almost impossible. Now, listen carefully, because this is where everything begins to connect. The reason it felt so difficult before, the reason you kept losing focus, the reason you kept calling yourself lazy, is because you were trying to solve the wrong problem. You thought the issue was your discipline, your willpower, your ability to stay committed. But the real issue was deeper. It was the structure around your attention, the habits you've built over time, the environment you've created without realizing it. And once you start adjusting that, everything changes. Not instantly, but gradually. You begin to notice that it's easier to start tasks, easier to stay focused for a little longer, easier to return when your attention drifts. And that builds confidence. Not fake confidence, but real confidence based on experience. Because now you see progress. You feel the difference. And that motivates you in a different way. Not through pressure, but through clarity. And that clarity allows you to move forward without constantly fighting yourself. Because now, you're working with your mind, not against it. And as that continues, something even deeper begins to settle inside you. A sense of control, not over everything, but over your own attention. And that changes the way you approach your work, your goals, your daily life. Because now you're not constantly reacting to distractions. You're choosing where your focus goes. And that creates consistency. Not forced consistency, but natural consistency. Because when focus becomes easier, showing up becomes easier. And when showing up becomes easier, progress becomes inevitable. Not fast, not dramatic, but steady. And that's what actually matters. Because real results don't come from occasional bursts of motivation. They come from consistent action over time. And that consistency starts with focus. Not perfect focus, but enough to keep moving forward. And right now, that's what you are rebuilding. One moment at a time. And now, before you leave this moment, before your mind goes back to labeling itself again, take this with you. You're not lazy. You're not broken. You're not incapable. You are adapting. You are learning. You are rebuilding something that was overloaded, not missing. Say this slowly in your mind and feel it. I can focus. I just need the right conditions. Again, I can focus. I just need the right conditions. Let that settle deeply inside you. Because the way you see yourself shapes everything you do. And if you stop seeing yourself as the problem, you start solving the real problem. And once you do that, everything changes. Not instantly, but consistently. Step by step, moment by moment. You begin to take back control of your attention, your time, your energy. And from that, everything else follows.